Hello and welcome again to Understanding Transitional Justice. We're continuing our discussion of post-conflict justice and gender. And in the second section, I want to concentrate on roles that gender plays in processes of reconciliation. What is important about processes of reconciliation is that particular roles are assigned according to gender in processes of reconciliation, and these are rooted in and they have effects on the ways that the social environment is perceived, not only in the post-conflict situation, but also the social situation during the time that violence is taking place and before violence takes place. And here I think is the problem, is that there are essentialist presuppositions about gender that come to take a role in processes of reconciliation, especially to the degree that processes of reconciliation are the product of intervention. So what is the framework in which we can talk about reconciliation activism? I see that in the title of the slide I have a typo there, sorry. What is the framework in which is offered? There is generally the perception that in the social environment, as the carriers of sociability, as the people who carry relations between families, within the neighborhood, within the community, that women are perceived as somehow being natural carriers of reconciliation. This means that much of the burden for reconciliation is placed on women. Now, at the same time that you have intervening agencies like international non-governmental organizations constructing this role for women, you have women with practical, or you could say instrumental motivations who want to take advantage of the fact that there's intervention, to use it, either to promote the causes and agendas that they're interested in promoting, or for other kinds of benefit. That is to say, that women are inclined to learn and to reproduce the language of reconciliation that is promoted through these organizations. So it's international intervention and the financial and organizational intervention by international non-governmental organizations that takes a role. There is also a role, and this is especially important when we're talking about post-socialist environments like the one that Elisa Helms writes about in Bosnia and Herzegovina, one of the successor states to the former Yugoslavia, where there is a legacy, a pre-war legacy of political and social activity and activism by women from the period of state socialism. Now, there is a period, if we're talking about the former Yugoslavia, very early in the state socialist period, where women's activism is highly politicized. Those of you who are interested in looking at the history of this, I've put just the abbreviation here, AFRJ, but look at the League of Anti-Fascist Women. This was intensely political, and it was involved in promoting literacy and health and agendas of equality, but it lasted a short time. The AFRJ was disbanded still in the 1940s, and after that, women's political and social activity in the state socialist period is gendered. That is, it is mostly depoliticized. It is charity-based. It is based on the promotion of sociability and on relationships. That is, in pursuit of the kind of formal equality that was a part of the state socialist agenda, rather than the politically conceived equality that becomes a part of the feminist program. So this depoliticized form of activism is picked up and carried through international intervention to regard reconciliation as essentially an apolitical or depoliticized process, one of building sociability, of building relationships, but not of directly addressing problems of inequality, problems of violence, problems arising from unequal relationships, problems arising from troubled memory. Why are these things problems? Well, the problem is that this whole framework is built upon a kind of essentialist understanding of gender, and there is a contradiction at the heart of it to the degree that the project of reconciliation carries with it political goals, Many of these political goals are progressive in ambition, but they are built using perceptions of gender that are fundamentally conservative or restorationist in character. And here is a factor that is recognizable to people in the field, but not necessarily recognizable to people intervening from outside of the field. That is that the patterns that are produced reproduce early patterns of activity and difference from the previous regime in post-socialist environments. This agenda of formal equality with an essentialized distribution of roles. But there's more to this too. To the degree that women are regarded as the carriers of reconciliation and given the responsibility for carrying the project of reconciliation, what this means is that the burden of reconciliation is not held by people who organized and planned and committed the violence. The people holding power are relieved of responsibility, and it is depoliticized and transferred further down in the hierarchy of social power. And what then people do within this this reduced frame of social power within which the process of reconciliation takes place, well, they're encouraged not to talk about the reasons why there is a need for reconciliation in the first place. They're encouraged to try to recapture forms of sociability that existed before the period of violence in the post-violence and post-conflict period, which is probably impossible. And it's impossible, and it also brings with it some contradictions. What are some of these contradictions? Well, one of them is that the rhetoric of gender equality, which is a part of the rhetoric of the project of reconciliation, interacts and is sometimes meshed perfectly with rhetorics of national chauvinism, of ethnic discrimination. So the carriers of reconciliation are often encouraged to say, yes, well, we're able to carry reconciliation because we have an idea of equality, we are outward looking, we are open. The people that we need to reconcile with are traditional and backward. That is to say that the rhetoric of gender equality intersects with some other gender-based nationalist rhetorics, not all of which are about equality, including some of the rhetorics that are used and deployed in the period of constructing conflict, complaints about different fertility rates in different populations, for example. Another problem arising in practice, and this is something that I've at least hinted at a little bit earlier, is the problem of silence. Invitations to reconciliation require suppressing memory and feelings related to traumatic experience. They encourage the posture of saying, we can all be friends, we all once were friends, we can be friends again, but the possibility of raising facts that could interfere with this development of friendship is perceived as problematic. Consequently, it is silenced, and this is a source of discomfort in the social environment. It's probably a barrier to sincere forms of reconciliation. So what can we say about gender in processes of reconciliation? I mean, the most important thing that we have to realize is that processes of reconciliation are gendered, and they are largely gendered because of previously established relationships that predate the conflict, and because of the preconceptions and agendas of outsiders intervening in the post-conflict environment. And this affects the kind of reconciliation processes that take place, and it affects the experience of participants in these processes. And this fact probably contributes to the widely held perception among people in the field in post-conflict environments that the project of reconciliation is somehow artificial, that it's somehow imposed, that it doesn't reflect the actual goals and desires of people in the post-conflict environment.